We product managers know that to succeed in today's world, we must bring new initiatives to fruition. Whether at the office or as a side project, we all want to bring new things to the table. But what happens when you're working on multiple projects? In this interactive, hands-on talk, we will discuss high-level strategies of prioritization and the nitty-gritty of managing tasks and goals of several ventures at once. By the way, nice to meet you. My name is Maria Cassis, and I'm the founder and general manager of Product League, and we help you to become the best product manager you can be. Product League is an international mentoring program for product managers by product managers in 30 countries around the world, from Australia to Nigeria, from United Kingdom to Brazil, and everywhere in between. This Practical Wednesday semi-workshop explains the systems and the tools Liron Lavi-Turkeinch has been using for the last 10 years. And with no further ado, let's call Liron, our speaker for today, to the stage.
Liron Lavi-Turkeinch is a multi-passionate design entrepreneur and a typeface designer. She designs custom multilingual typefaces and is the founder of Aravrit, a new hybrid writing system that merges Hebrew and Arabic. Asking question is her superpower. She loves traveling and never stops her search for the finest coffee. And talking about bringing things to fruition, this talk workshop, everything in between, has been in the making for like 4 months now?
Yeah, I would say at least 4 months.
At least. What's up, Liron?
Everything is great. I am so excited to be here and be speaking to everyone, with everyone about this topic. And
we are
actually,
so excited.
Thank you for the invitation. It's so great to hear about the program and everything.
The pleasure is absolutely ours. We love the opportunity to bring your know-how to our community. And, this is a very harsh topic, right? Because we all want to create more. We all want to do more. And it's not about creating more time. It's about prioritization, understanding how to make things work for you, right? Because it's not necessarily about doing more, but about doing things that matter, right? We should say that. We should absolutely mention that.
Yes.
And this is part of your secret sauce, right? If I may call it this way, right? Doing so many things and different kind of things in different domains that somehow get all together to create a very interesting, not just persona, if I may, but also a professional. And we want to bring this knowledge to our community because this is so important. And as I said, this is the key to succeed in today's world, today's professional world. So I'm super, super excited about this session today. Thank you so much for joining us. And let's see who we've got here in the audience, because we want to meet everyone, right? We want to make it into our little product party.
Absolutely.
Yes, so we already have Yanir here joining us, VP Product at Mobidio, joining from Israel. Happy to have you here with us. Yanir is one of our mentees. We have Sylvia joining us. Hello to you. And everyone else who is joining us right now, wherever it is, on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, let us know who you are and what is it that you do in the comment section, because we really want to get to know you.
We absolutely do. And we also want to mention here, which is a very important thing, this talk is not about hustle culture. We are very much against hustle culture. And I think that what's interesting about this topic is we do want to create more. And we had some discussions about this between us. We want to create more and more. But how are we feeling with what we're creating? So are we feeling depleted at the end of the day, or we're feeling energized? Are we feeling that we're just trying to pile up more and more? Are we being disappointed with things that we expected ourselves to do and we didn't get to, which we're going to tackle today? All these things are so emotional, and so there are like huge gaps that we can't anticipate when we begin a new project. So we're going to talk about these things for sure today.
I'm looking forward to it myself. Like, I'm really, really looking forward to it, to learning from you and to product party here with you. Everyone who is watching us right now, please keep on commenting. Okay, more is coming. I know Liron has some tricks up her sleeve here, okay, to make you feel involved. This is really is a semi-workshop interaction here. You're going to learn stuff, you're going to practice stuff, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Shall we start?
Yes, let's dive on in.
Let's do
And
that.
I will say, once we can already go ahead and share the slides. Are everyone seeing them already? Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Great. So while we're here in the first slide, I will say, and I'll share a bit more about me and why am I even talking to you today. But I wanted to mention that this topic of passion projects, side projects, we all have our day-to-day work and projects that we're doing within work. And then there is a huge variety of these passion projects and of these side projects. It's things that we normally do in the, I would say, in the gaps that we have, in the empty spaces, or not really empty, as we know, like our days are filling up so quickly. But we are expecting to make some space for these projects. These projects are super important to us. The completion of these projects will also teach us about ourselves and also help us understand our capabilities and show us how people are reacting to it in a way that we don't necessarily get to do, or in ways and layers we don't necessarily get to do in our own work. And the reason we decided to talk about these passion projects are their importance, you know, for our careers, for the things that we want to achieve, or for our long-term goals. So we want to make sure that we have some projects and some things that are brewing up in our busy, bustling mind, which I'm sure everyone here has, and just trying to make them work, make them fit in our day-to-day. And this is what we're going to talk about today, mostly. So also, this is, as we said, it's like an interactive talk workshop where we are going to have a few questions and a few exercises for you. And we're going to go through a bunch of methods that will help, hopefully. And this is a pick and choose talk. So you can take what you need and just leave the rest, because as I said, our brains are so full of information. Information overload is not an uncommon term these days. So take what you need and just leave the rest. If something piques your interest, I put some, as the nerd I am, I put some the names and the theories behind in the bottom, like in the captions size. And then you can also dig in later and read a lot more about these people. So let's start with the situation that's happening. So we know that we want to do a project. We know that this project is just unrelated to the scope of our work as product managers. We know how to do the KPIs. We know how to do everything that we need, you know, that we already do in our work. So we know how to tackle a project. And then there is this fork in the road, and I searched for the prettiest fork in the road I could find, because most of them were super, shutterstocky. So I was trying to find a nice one. And then we have this fork, and we need to decide which approach we're tackling. And I think that this is maybe more of an inner approach that we want, rather than a clear method of how we're approaching it. So I want you to pay attention to these two humans. They're invented humans. And just think, which one do you resonate with more? So we're starting with Flowing Florian, and pay attention, because I also did this meta thing and I just showed you what comes up when I'm searching for a lovely image of passion project. So Flowing Florian is already very serious and deep, very well respected in his or her profession. And this passion project is really all about having fun. Yes, it's about outcomes, but there is no clear deadline. And Florian wants to have fun. He wants to enjoy. He wants to flow with the process. He wants to do this project in whichever time it takes, in whatever way it takes, in whichever tasks will appear to him or her. Florian's most important thing is to be flowing with this project and to enjoy. On the other hand, or on the other side of the fork, we have planning Paula. Paula knows how to do the work. She knows how to build a project. She knows how to create a new project from scratch. She knows how to deliver. She knows all the steps that are required. She knows all the obstacles that she might encounter. She knows all the gaps. She knows which people she needs to activate to get things going. She has everything very clearly mapped in her brain. And for her, this is just another project. It's a passion project. The outcomes are important to her. She really knows what she wants to achieve, very similar to Florian. But planning Paula has her way, and she already has it scheduled on her calendar. She's going to work on it 4 nights a week, 2 to 3 hours each night, and she's going to also dedicate a whole day during her weekend, out of her 2-day weekends, 2 days weekend, she's going to dedicate a whole day to working on her passion project. Now, my question to you, and Moria, if we can open the poll as well, which one do you resonate with more? Are you flowing Florian, or are you more of a planning Paula? And while the poll gets going, we can start thinking about this and what it means to us. What we can think of a project that we have in mind. We can think of a project that we already started, or a project that is, kind of like sitting in our brain and starting to get discovered, or is starting to, becoming a real thing. Which approach would we prefer? Which approach are we more naturally leaning to? Which approach do we think that fits us better? So you can also reply in the chat, and also feel free to comment as much as you want. By the way, if you have any questions during this talk workshop, please feel free to also put them in the chat, put them in the comment section, and we'll continue. We'll also have some time for Q&A at the end. So are you more of a flowing Florian or planning Paula? Think about the project that you did. Think about the project that you are about to do, or you're just thinking of doing. Which one of these people, these humans, spoke more to you? We'll give it a few more seconds to see. All right, we have Maria here saying that she is planning Paula, but she dreams of being more like flowing Florian. And this is really interesting to think of. What is the gap between the way we would like to be and the way we are? And perhaps the gap is not as big as we think. This is just a hint for my own reaction. Liron here says that it's probably a mix, which is a really excellent answer. And I'm saying excellent not because there are scores here, just because I very much identify with this. So for me, I found that some projects for me are more of a planning Paula, and I start mapping up everything. And I also see someone on LinkedIn, it's anonymous, but they are flowing Florian for sure. Because
I'm jumping in, not because I want to disturb you, just because I want to share. We cannot post it for some reason, but on YouTube, 75% of viewers are Florian. Very interesting.
Nice. Very interesting.
And now the floor is yours again.
Well, and as I started saying, I can very much identify with this. We have so much of this work, KPIs, and however we are treating our work, that we just want this passion project to be fun. We don't want to report to anyone. We want to, just do it in our own pace, not have any stress or any outside pressure. We just want our own motivation to kind of push us through. So in some of my projects, I have definitely been a flowing Florian, which turned to be a planning Paula. And in some projects, I was the planning Paula, which never understood that she actually needs to be flowing Florian. So for me, it's also a mix. Now, I won't go very deep into who I am and what I'm doing. This is, well, first of all, there was the nice intro, so thank you for that, Moria. but also it's very easy these days to just understand who's doing what. So that's not something that should be difficult. But I will say that in the past over a decade, I have been working on multiple projects. I am not a product manager, but I have been managing a lot of products and my projects. So I'm completely self-employed. I'm a design entrepreneur and a typeface designer. I do research, I write, I produce conferences, I do many, many, many things. And I have my own brand of Hebrew and Arabic hybrid letters, which also has some streams to that, like an online shop and so on. I have been struggling with working on multiple projects and trying to get myself moving in many of them. Some of them it's easier because I can define that this is my day job. This is the thing I need to do. And some of them are just ideas that are popping and I have to do something about them. After working on all of these projects and kind of just going very, very, very overwhelmed, I started realizing that I need some systems in place. And I started digging deep and diving into this whole topic, which started as productivity. But as I said, I am very much against hustle culture and working more towards achieving the things I want and to get done. And not because I want to get done as many of them, but because I want to see my projects come to life. And I need to find a path that will allow me to do that, that will allow the creativity to flow in the direction that I want it to, and not just go all over the board and not get anything of my goals. So as I said, I am both of them, I would say. And I saw that there are some replies that are saying also that they're both of them and we are moving between them. So in the case of flowing Florian, the thing that can happen to us, and now I want us to talk about these gaps, the things that can happen if we're deciding to go in one of these routes. So in case we're flowing Florian, the thing that can happen is that we might get, our motivation might just dip a little or sink a little. We might not be able to motivate ourselves a lot more. We might be waiting for inspiration to arrive or for things to happen. And then we might just get discouraged to continue our projects. I am very much guilty in that. I have several projects that started as a very much flowing Florian that wanted to do many things but didn't get to at the end. In the case of planning Paula, something else could happen. And what I want us to do today is to go through some methods that can help us in these gaps that could happen. How are we helping ourselves get these passion projects or side projects accomplished the way we want them to? So in the case of planning Paula, something that can happen, and it happened to me several times, actually, it even happened to me this evening before this talk, is something that's called planning fallacy. If you're not familiar with this is a cognitive bias. And this cognitive bias was kind of identified, not invented, but identified by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky in 1977. Can be read about in the book, Thinking Fast and Slow, which I'm sure a lot of people here know. And what they found is that we systematically underestimate the time that it will take us to complete an action. So, for instance, I thought that working on this talk, and Moria is my witness, I thought that it will take me 3 to 4 hours to compile the slides, to design them. I already had the structure built. But in reality, I was working on it until 1 hour ago, all through the afternoon. So planning fallacy is something that happens again and again. And the interesting thing is that although we know that it might happen, and we know that from past experience it happened to us already, we are still going to get it. It's very, very, very persistent. So the research suggests that we don't even learn from our mistakes, which is something that is just mind-blowing to me. It even comes to a point that we think, and please let us know in the comments if you identify with this, that we think that we might beat the time estimation that Waze or Google Maps will give us while we're driving. This happens to me every time. I'm seeing 14 minutes and I'm thinking, I'll probably be able to do it in 10. it never happens. Perhaps something happens, but in the other way, because it just gets delayed and delayed more and more. So this thing also is research based, and if anyone is interested, I'm happy to provide a lot of research about this. People are underestimating. So someone is thinking that they're going to get their thesis done in X time, and only 30% of the people actually get it done in that time. So why is this happening? What are these origins of this planning fallacy? So here are some that's been identified by Anne-Laure Leknaf. She's excellent. I highly recommend signing up to her newsletter on Nest Labs. She kind of summarizes a lot of these cognitive bias and neuroscience. And she talks about optimism bias to begin with. So there is this cognitive bias that causes us to believe that we are less likely to experience a negative event. For instance, I did not anticipate my 19-month-old son to break his foot just before working on this presentation. So someone who is doing a bungee jump is not thinking about the risks, or not thinking that the risk of injury could happen to them. So if we're thinking about it in work-wise, we think that it's pretty unlikely that a negative event will actually affect us or prevent us from meeting a deadline that we want. The other thing that we're seeing is motivated reasoning, and I'm sure every person could identify with this. We are telling ourselves some justifications. We are actually creating them from scratch that correspond to what we want, rather than to what accurately reflects the evidence. So we're thinking that we want this deadline to be met, so we are going to get this deadline met, but we might not in real time. And the last part is we are taking an inside view. Okay, so we are focusing on the details of this scenario. We are less focused on big pictures, and this is actually some of your work as product managers, I'm sure. But when we start planning a project, we will start, and we'll get to that in a future slide, we'll start listing all the tasks that we need to be doing, all the people we need to contact, all the links we need, all the inspiration we need, all the funds we need to raise. We are looking in such a particular lens. We don't even see the outside, the external view. And we rarely take time to research similar projects or to learn from other people how they tackled and their problems with this project. So we actually get a very distorted view that is based on our inner perception. So if we're looking at these three and this planning fallacy, there are two methods that I recommend working with, and you are more than welcome, as I am doing, just altering between them, and we're going to see my recommendations of where to tackle which one. But in the meantime, in the comment section, please tell us if you think you have fallen in this planning fallacy. And if you have, and you have a story that you want to share, please do so. This literally happens to me on a daily basis. So one of the methods that is very much recommended is time blocking, also known as time boxing. Time blocking, you can read about this at Cal Newport, at Mirial, and many other people who are talking about this. Time blocking means that we are going to dedicate and block time on our calendar to work on this passion project or on this side project. It can be a full day, but it doesn't have to, because most of us have a day job. So we can do a time block for several hours on a weekend, in the evening, take a day off, and just decide that we're going to dive deep and focus on that. The other method of tackling this planning fallacy and also attacking this gap that we have between the thing that we really want to accomplish and the reality and things getting in the way of that is the 66-day challenge, and creating actually even not necessarily the 66-day challenge, which I'll talk about in a second, but creating very short-term challenges for ourselves, like hackathons or mini sprints for that matter. So there is a lot, and there was a lot to be said about habits and how to form habits. There was this thing that said that 21 days is a habit, and there is, Atomic Habits by James Clear, which everyone I'm sure has an opinion on and have tried maybe some of these methods or tactics. This challenge is very helpful to me personally in some cases, and I'll share in a second. One of my ways into this working on a side project by challenges was a creation of I started doing some more Instagram posting. Because of that, I decided that for a month I'm going to post every day, and I'm just going to hold this experiment for a month. This is my challenge. On the book, the very recommended book, The One Thing by Gary Keller, he talks about the 60-day challenge. And this is how I actually got a habit of meditation. Thank you, Alicia, for saying that whenever you estimate the time required, you always underestimate it. I am with you on that. So here is an example for a project I was doing merely on a challenge base. I decided that for a whole month, okay, let me back up a bit. Perhaps you are with me on this, and let me know if you are. You have hundreds of tabs open on your phone or on your browser, on your desktop. I reached a point that I had over 200 tabs on my phone open of things I wanted to read or things I wanted to explore more. Now I have my systems to tackle that as well. If anyone wants to know, we'll talk about that in the Q&A. But I decided that I really want to find time to read, and I should probably set myself a framework. This is a passion project, not revenue generating, nothing like that, nothing that will hold me accountable. So I decided to create something that will make me accountable. I decided that the framework is going to be like this. Every day for a whole month, I am going to read 2 of these tabs, and I'm going to put them on a website, just on a mini site or just a page on my website called the Daily Do. And I'm going to put these 2, an image from that article and put a link to the article, and that's it. I did that for 30 days and I felt so accomplished. I was so happy with what I read. And I really loved that there was a storage space for all this knowledge and stuff I was interested in. So let me give you my own take on how to use, which one to use and how we should use them. And again, let me remind you that this talks about passion projects or side projects that you feel that need to get moving or get going, things that you want to do, but you didn't get to actually doing. So when to use what? The ways I'm using a challenge is when I know that I have this little competitor in me that really wants to do something, even if it's competing against myself, by the way. I know that it needs to be a short-term project. I wouldn't be able to do a challenge for 3 years, for instance, although I did do a challenge for a daily meditation for 1 full year for 5 minutes. It should be something that is very well framed, and I already know my next steps. And lastly, and this is something I felt that I have to identify and phrase out, is that I feel depleted after doing that. So for me, it's posting on my personal Instagram page. I feel very tired. I feel like energy was sucked out of me. And this is really good for challenge because I know that this only should live in this very specific and short time frame. When should we go for time blocks then? So this is when we need a time to dive deep. Like for instance, when I'm doing research on something, it's something that time blocking is really good when we need to process or think something through. If I have this new theory that I'm going to do a talk about, I really need to sit for a couple of hours and work on this. If I would define that I'm going to have like 1 hour a day or 30 minutes a day, I don't think I would ever reach the depth that I did when I was spending a few hours on that. And also, it can happen in a stage that is required and some heavy lifting is required, like I am about to meet my own personal deadline for a project, and I'm just going to do a sprint that is going to also take a few hours every day, and I'm going to dive deep and work on that. So now is the time for a question, and I'll also get a sip of water. Which method do you think will work best or is working best for you? And while we're talking and while I'm waiting for some of these replies to come up, in case we can. Let's also think about these challenges or these problems that can happen when we have this passion project or side project that we really want to do, but we don't get to. What can happen to us? How can we feel? All right, Amanda, you're saying that time blocking works really well for you. So some people are doing that also at work. I know that I have a few friends who are writers, and that's what they do. They time block some time and they write. For me, it's normally kind of hard to do it. A lot of things are coming in. A lot of things need to be delivered. So it's really hard for me to spend this time for deep thinking. So thinking about the things that we can lose, we can become really overwhelmed with our idea that's brewing and also like bursting almost from our head. We can also have the risk of losing momentum. We can start like on a really high note, really want to do, and also we can lose our energy and motivation for that. Maria here says that time blocking is something that she uses very often to learn new topics, and this is excellent. This is something that Cal Newport writes about a lot. He writes about deep work, and this is exactly fits this perfectly. We're going to move on, and I'm going to do to walk us through three key methods, or I'll think of the right word for this, but we're going to go through 3 sections. And in each one of them, I'm going to walk us through a couple of ideas that I've been using in the past over a decade to get to work on these passion projects or on these side projects. The first chapter, I would say, or the first section is containers. Containers is something that I cannot stress enough. I'm sure that some of you have containers already in your life, whether if it's in your personal life or in your work life or in your home life. A container is where we put everything. We have lots of things around us. Where do we put it? Where do we put the information and the data we collect? Where do we put the information and the data we create? Where do we put our ideas? Where do we put our creations? Where do we put our projects? These days, there are so many distractions, and I'm not even getting into the part of focusing, which is such a huge topic and flow. But there are so many distractions that are preventing us from crystallizing this time that we dedicate to the project. And by working with containers, and I'm going to go through several of them, by working with containers, we can actually manage these things and organize them a bit better. So the first idea is something you're maybe familiar with. It's the brain dump. My brain dump is not that organized like in this image, for sure. A brain dump is when we feel that we have so many ideas, so many tasks, so many things going around in our head, and we just let them be in our head. So David Allen, the creator of Getting Things Done, GTD, said a phrase that is very famous today, this word in the productivity area. A mind is for having ideas, not for storing them. So brain dump is a really good thing to do. It's a very simple exercise. If you didn't do it already in your life, you didn't experience it, I highly recommend doing it first thing in the morning or maybe even after this. Just writing down everything you have, all the ideas, all your dreams, all your projects, all your ideas for projects, all the steps, all the tasks, everything that's right now in your mind. After that, you'll need to store it and to kind of split it or sort it in your containers. And here is where we're getting to the PARA method. The PARA method is a part of building a second brain. It's a system of Tiago Forte. He's the founder and creator of this system. It's a very well-defined system for personal knowledge management, PKM, if you're familiar with the term. And PARA actually talks about how we organize our life, basically, but we can organize it. We can organize our passion projects and side projects like this. And this is how I'm using Para, for instance. And Liron, I'm happy that the tip is awesome for you. And I'm looking forward to hearing how that went. It can be overwhelming. But I will say, on a side note, that after you finish writing for a whole page, please continue, because you're going to see how you're feeling like 5 or 6 pages, and if you just give it a bit of time. So Tiago Forte identified 4 containers that we can store our information, data, research, tasks, everything we need. So it's called PARA, and it stands for Projects, Areas, Resources, and Archive. Let me start with the archives. These are the inactive things that are not belonging in any other 3 categories. These are the things we don't want to delete. If you're afraid of deleting stuff like me, just stuff it in the archive, and that's it. You forget about it. So a project is, it needs to, well, I know who I'm talking to, so I won't get very deep into projects. But let me just identify it here right now that a project is a series of specific tasks linked with a deadline. And this deadline can be definitely something that we set for ourselves. Areas of responsibilities are a sphere of the activities. There can be projects in this area, and it can also be something that we're interested in. So, for instance, a side project that I have, or a side area that I have, is fitness or calisthenics, for instance. I'm not into that, but just for the example. So I'm interested in that area. There is no specific project, but I'm kind of collecting data, collecting information, reading about this. This is where I'll put the area stuff. Maybe at some point, there will be a project coming up from this area. Next up is resources. Resource is very similar to areas, although this is a bit more broad. This is something of ongoing interest. It can be, again, it can be a very broad area, such as health, or something that's interested, I don't know, children or children education, for instance. I'll just say that the area is something that needs to be maintained in some way, and we are in charge of that. So it's things that are under our responsibility, like even my business's finances, for instance. That's an area for me. There is no deadline for that. This is like ongoing. So there is a lot more to say about this system, and Tiago Forte obviously says better than me. I highly recommend his new book, that really explains this whole system very well. And for that, I just wanted to mention code, which really talks about, in my point of view, really talks about these passion projects or side projects. We are collecting information, we are organizing it, we're distilling it, and actually saying it in our own words while we're understanding it. And then we're expressing it. This expression can be a project. This can be a piece of writing, which I also consider a passion project. And we do something with this information. It's not just there to be there. We're not just reading it for the sake of reading it. We're learning in the hope that someday it will be expressed in some way. By the way, even this talk that I'm giving now is an expression after I've read a lot and I've distilled some of the ideas, and I'm delivering it to you now. This is exactly a way to express a project or express a topic. So, next actions. I had to put this really embarrassing image. To me, it's embarrassing because when I started, and this was for my online shop, it had literally no revenue goals at that time. And I just decided that I'm going to map out everything I need for the project. I'm going to list all the tasks, and I'm going to divide it by 8 weeks. And I was about to have my second baby, so I said, yeah, I'll do it in these 8 weeks until I'm having the baby. And I just listed everything, which, as everyone here I'm sure knows, was a very useless idea. I didn't anticipate all these external things that are going to come, all these complications. I had literally, I don't think I've even wrote down 10% of the actual tasks that I had, but I had no idea at the time. So I understand that some people like me need to map up everything. Like sometimes I see a vision of a project coming up so clearly, and I just need to write it down, all the steps. Planning Paula enters planning Paula. And after we do that, the thing that we need to do is put it aside and work on your next action. So if you're doing next actions in your work, in your day job, that's fantastic. So I'm working today just with next actions, just the next immediate action I need. And the last bit is having a space and this container to put all the open loops that we need. Like, don't let them drop at all. And this literally means that questions are going to arrive again and again as open loops when we stop working on something, and we need to give these answers, these questions an answer that will be visible to us in the next time that we're approaching something. So the question is, what to do next? What's my next action? What have I already done? Some kind of activity log or so on. What's important? What is our needle mover? What's going to move it? What's going to make the difference? What's waiting? What are the things that we're not taking any action on, but we need to wait for someone or something? And when is the next time I'll work on it? When is the next time slot that I'm actually going to work on this thing? And sometimes you can put it on your calendar, you can put it in Notion or any other task management that you're using, system that you're using. I'm working with Notion. And also how much time I'll have to work on it this time. So a few container suggestions that I highly recommend everyone to have, and this can be just an empty Google Doc or a place in your task management system. Even if you're using it for work, maybe you can put, open another account for your personal stuff. So someday maybe list of all the things we want to do but don't actually have time for right now, or don't want to tackle right now. Things that we would like to outsource. Even if we have a passion project, it doesn't mean that we need to do everything on our own. We can outsource some of the things. Our time is super precious. Things that we're waiting on, which I already mentioned, things that we don't have an action, but they're still waiting in our mind and taking up space. Putting this to process or junk drawer is really important for all the things that don't really have a list, don't really have a container. Another is notes that we're writing from meetings, ideas, brainstorming, things, links or things that we want to read related to our passion project or side project. All right, moving on to the next one, because I see we're already tight in time, is to talk about our energy. This is so important. I cannot stress this enough. For years, I have been thinking that something's wrong with me because I have been working with the Pomodoro technique, and it's been working, but not working perfectly. It doesn't fit everyone. And only when I met the work of Rahaf Harfouch, which you can see here, and I highly recommend taking her LinkedIn Learning class, Human Productivity, and she's brilliant. She talks about the performance cycle. And this cycle is individual for every person. Some people can be, so meaning that the steps, the slides, and how this graph looks can be different for everyone, and it's actually different for everyone. So here are the 4 stages that are compiling this performance cycle that we have. The first one is just to rev up. We're just getting started. This is a time that we are super motivated for our project. The next, and this performance cycle is for every chunk of time that we're working on the project. The next one is peak performance. This is the thing that everyone talks about. Yeah, the flow, being in the flow, being completely focused, like the holy grail of productivity, as Rahaf says. This is like the hyper-focused stage. Everyone just talks about this one. And this is, it takes a lot of our energy. The next step, and this is something that no one talks about, and it's sometimes even hard to identify, is that we're starting to get out of the flow. We're still working, but we start hitting creative blocks. We're starting to get a bit messy, do some mistakes perhaps. And this is what society have taught us to ignore or to push harder, hustle through. So we're not doing that anymore. We are not in that magic stage, and we should know that we're starting to drift off and our peak performance is starting to decline. Lastly, there is the recovery stage. Oh, this is so important, and Rahaf talks about this so much. We must take time to replenish and to recharge, and resting is one and recharging is another, and it can be reading something and it can be just resting with our eyes closed. And this is often skipped and ignored, and only after we complete this complete this recovery stage, we can only start to rev up for another cycle. So some people, it will take them 10 minutes to rev up, and they will lose focus after 15 minutes. They might be able to do two optimized times, one after the other, and then they'll need 10 minutes of rest. Others could be 60 minutes in peak performance, and it will take them 25 minutes to rev up and get into that. And they might need 60 minutes of rest. So something that I really recommend, and I'm going to show it to you in the next slide. Let me put up this poll first. So how long do you estimate that you are in peak performance? So you can see everything jumping at you. You can type the answers. You can use the poll, whichever way fits you. How long do you think it takes you? Under 10 minutes, between 10 and 30 minutes, between 30 and 60 minutes, between 60 and 90 minutes. So let us know what you think. And while we're getting some answers, I'll share with you this method or this tracking thing I did. So here's how I'm finding my performance cycle. I am marking my start time, and it's really hard to know at first how it happens. And you can see it's kind of messy, so still I'm sharing it with you for the sake of transparency, which I love. So we are talking about our start time. When am I starting? When am I sitting down to work on my passion project? I'm reminding you. When is the stop time? This I'll complete later. How many interruptions I had during this time? How much work time I actually had, peak performance? And how long do I need the break time or the rest time? And for me, it changed. I see that the slide is kind of cutting it, so apologies for that. You don't see the work time and the break time that I needed. All right, Guy and Alicia are estimating 30 to 60 minutes. I highly recommend testing this out whenever you can. Next time you're sitting to work on your passion project, you might be even surprised that it's different from your day job, from your product managing job. So I love doing this. I love understanding how I'm working, and then I'm understanding why Pomodoro is not always right for me. God also says 30 to 60 minutes. Thank you, everyone who thinks, who comments. If you're not commenting and you're just thinking about it, then that's excellent as well. All right, moving on, because we're a bit tight with time. This is the model of 168 hours, and this is something that I will just talk about very, very, very swiftly. This model is, I've read about this a lot in Laura Vanderkam's work. She is like a hyper productivity guru with 5 kids and a writer of many, 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 many books. And only when I understood how she's working and how this model works, it allowed me to feel so much better about my time and how I'm using my time. I used to think that I have 24 hours a day, and during these 24 hours, I need to find time to work on my passion project. I also need to find time to meet friends. I also need time to do my yoga practice. I also need time to be with my partner, to have quality time with my kids, to wash the dishes and to clean the house, and so on and so on, and to cook something healthy. But Laura Vanderkam recommends looking at our time as a week, 168 hours rather than 24 hours. This means, listen to this easy calculation. We have 40 hours per week. We're adding to it 8 hours of sleep for 7 days. That's 56 hours. We are getting to, there's attention building. We're getting to 72 hours per week that we still have remaining. Then we're going to give like 10 hours for commute. We're going to give 10 hours for running errands. We're going to give 5 hours for taking showers and getting ready a week. And let's say we're even expanding our work hours to over 40. Let's give it 50 hours per week. We still have 37 hours per week that we can do stuff. Now, if I'm expecting myself to get some things done during my during my practice or during my passion project work time every day, I might not get it and I might get very disappointed. But if I'm deciding that I'm going to dedicate 3 hours a week, it can be any different number, a week, and I'm going to look at that time as the 168 hours, I'm going to see that I have plenty of time and I'm also feeling so much better with myself. We don't have time for this exercise, unfortunately. But this is something I really recommend. You can take a screenshot or something of sitting for a few minutes with yourself and looking at the realistic predictions. How is life at home looking right now? What are your external constraints? What are your career hunches? Are you going to get a promotion? Going to be busier? Are you going to cut down on your hours, for instance? And personal needs and energy. Like, I know that I'm now in these past few years, I don't like working at night. I rather wake up earlier if I want to get something personal for me to done. So I really recommend this. Highly recommend it. It will only take you about 4 to 5 minutes. And lastly, reflections. Reflections, meaning a weekly reflection or a monthly reflection, quarterly, even a yearly reflection is really helpful to see how we feel emotionally with our projects, with our expectations. How do we feel in our minds, and what are the gaps that we might be sensing? And only when I write down, I sense that there are lots of things that I didn't even tell myself. So I highly recommend reflections. All right, our last part with very short tips is reminders. If it's not reminded, it might not happen. All right, so 3 ideas for this. One is the Hemingway bridge. This is something I also learned from Tiago Forte. Hemingway would only end a writing session when he knew what came up next in the story. So he used his last bits of energy to come up with what's going to happen next. And that meant that the next time he is sitting down to work, or the rev up stage, he already knew what to do. So kind of built himself a bridge to the next day, to the next session we're working on when we're working on our passion projects or side projects. So he's actually using today's energy to help and fuel tomorrow's writing. The other thing is doing check-ins, putting it on your calendar. How often are you going to work on this passion project, and for how long? Try to make it realistic. Check in every once in a while, but also put it as a recurring event. If you're working with calendars, put it as a recurring event. And lastly, always have a place to write what was the last thing you were doing and what is the next action, what needs to be done now. So I'll give you an example. This is side project, working on my website, and I call this thing a PR day. I have 12 slots on my calendar already booked for a full day with myself that I'm working on PR. And whenever I get an idea of things I want to do, or tasks or things that could help me in achieving this goal of, putting up my website for all the ventures I have, I'm writing it down on the next PR slot that I have on my calendar. So you can see I need a podcast publications page on my website, and I'm just writing it. So next time I get to that date, I'm going to open it up and just start working by the tasks. Another option is just putting on your Notion or wherever, putting what you were working on and then what's your next action. And this really helps. And the reason this really helps is that we don't have to spend time diving back in. The dive is deep sometimes. Sometimes we only find that we're working on projects in differences of like even a month or 2 months between them. I know that I have a lot of projects that are on a very low simmer, and they're just waiting. The next time I'm going to tackle them, next time I'm going to dedicate time to them, I know that it's going to take me a while to get back to things, get my groove back, know what I need to do, know what I'm working on. And this is really very important in this part. Know what my next action, know what I need to do, help my future self work on this project. Thank you so much, Maria. This was my last slide. So I already also see that there is a question. from Alicia. And I'll put my last slide where you can also learn more about this. This is basically, it's a landing page with a planning template that I've been using in the past few years. There are questions I ask myself every day, and this is super helpful in reflection part. You can also read, I have bunch of places that I write about productivity, but realistic productivity, personal productivity, and the creative one for creatives, which I think of all of you as ones. So please feel free to reach out in any of the platforms, in any of the things. And I think, Moria, that we have a few more minutes for questions. Yeah?
Of course we do, because we have a fantastic question here from Alicia asking, when a project is stuck, how do you lift yourself up? And many thanks for the answer from all of us here.
Yeah, well, sometimes this is a very unpopular answer, but sometimes you just need to let it sit and let it be. And sometimes it's not the right time. But okay, now let me put the woo-woo aside, because I truly believe in that. But sometimes we do have these, this inner fire, and we really want to get it done, and it's stuck. So I would try and understand why it's stuck. And moreover, I would try, since we're the ones creating this project and coming up with it, we need to think of something extra easy, super fun, something that we love doing. And this is our next step. Not something huge, not something, for me, by the way, it's sometimes even just putting an Instagram story and saying that I'm working on this. I didn't touch it for 3 months. I don't feel like doing it.
You promise, hence you will deliver.
I promise. And this gets me very motivated. And this happened to me several times. I was stuck. I was like, I don't feel like working on it. Yeah, I'll just post like a process photo on stories, and that gets me going. So try to find something that is really easy peasy, and fun for you. I hope it helps, Alicia. But it happens to me so many times.
I'm sure it does. Thank you very much for your reply, Liron. And while the guys here are bringing their questions to us, okay, let's think and let's discuss, okay, the things that matter. And I'm going to challenge you here a little bit, asking you, what do you think is the ratio of success in your career that comes from these extra initiatives? Okay, so you are a freelancer or a business, of your own to begin with. So in some ways, you rely on your own ideas and your own initiatives. Okay, but we will put this aside, and I'll challenge you, if I may, to answer how much of your success do you think comes from that, derives from that?
I would say so much. Like, I'm not a numbers person. Oh, this is such a cliche to say. Well, I'm becoming a numbers person. Let me correct. But it's hard for me to say percentage. But you know what? I would say like 80% even. I think that the nice thing is that with these passion projects or side projects, so many of my actual work projects, like revenue generating projects, started as a passion project. You never know where these things will lead you, and you never know what might come up. And the other bit that I have to say about this is that someone gets interested in my work, for that matter, they will start reading about Arvrit, and then they will just follow somewhere, and they will see that I'm writing something about productivity or about the Haggadah we're producing, like this book we're producing now. So something will happen, and they will dive deep and get more interested and learn more and connect more over many, many, many things and platforms and layers. We're deep people with lots of layers.
Yeah. I love your answer. And I can share on top of that oftentimes when someone is reaching out to me asking how to get themselves prepared resume wise, okay, like on paper, to the next stage in their career, or climbing up the ladder, and they don't know how to showcase something, I'm like, this is the time for you to do something extra, either within the organization you're working at or outside of the organization as a side project. Just show us what can you do, okay?
Yeah.
And show the initiative. And it doesn't have to be something big, okay? We should also say that it shouldn't be it's always nice to have, big things on your CV, but it's not necessarily has to be big or, super, super impressive. It's about the fruition, about coming up with the idea, about execution, and sometimes even the things that we may see as minor to the other person. Either this is an interviewer, I'm sorry, or just as someone who is interested in our work, as in your case, to that person, that can be everything. That can be a game changer, showcasing something different and unique about us.
Absolutely. And this really happens so many times. And it also shows this is an opportunity for us to show our capabilities. We can dream up, we can create from scratch, we can bring something to fruition, and we can impact lives, like really impact someone or many people.
I should say that we should impact lives, not can. It's about, taking this ability and making it into something that is part of our daily routine, maybe, okay?
Yeah.
Bringing our initiatives, our dreams, our wishes to the world into new products and services, or micro products or mini services, right? But in a way that puts a smile on our faces. And yeah, I believe that as you showed us, if we put in the effort and the time, and we find how to put in the time, then we see so much success with what we do. I had the best time here with you on stage, learning from you.
Thank you so
And
much.
learning from your experience. It's not just about the theory. You bring your own know-how to our stage. So thank you so much for
Thank you,
doing that.
Moria.
I truly had the best time. We also have Amanda here, says thank you, and Maria was thanking you before. So thank you. As the ladies here said earlier, this was Liron Lavi-Turkeinch, a multi-passionate design entrepreneur and a typeface designer. I am Maria Cassis. This is Product League. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching us. We can't wait to support you in becoming the best product manager you can be. Don't forget to join us for our next session. Until then, hit the like button, subscribe, and watch the dozens of other interesting product management videos we have on our channel. Go league it up. Bye-bye, leaguers. Bye-bye, Liron. Can't wait to have you again on our stage sometime soon.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.